The DZOFilm Pavos are a set of 2x anamorphic lenses for Super 35 sensors. And they sort of sit in an unusual space within the affordable anamorphic landscape. They kind of exist in the middle ground between the cheaper end of the spectrum and then the more expensive end. And I think this has maybe meant that they not receive the attention that they deserve. So I had these lenses for just under 2 weeks, which wasn't a huge amount of time, but I tried to cram as much as possible into that period, shooting on them both on my LUMIX S5 2X and my RED Komodo. So in this video, we're gonna dive into what I think about them, how they look and feel on these different camera systems. I also had a chance to shoot a short doc project on them. So also look at how they perform on that kind of small scale documentary production work. I also test them out with the DJI Focus Pro, so we'll take a look at that. We'll also feature some more control tests, look at how they perform across the different focal lengths. And then finally, we'll bring this all together and I'll give you my final thoughts and recommendations of who I think these lenses are for and who's going to benefit from using them. Every year we take a family trip to North Wales, and I always love to test new kit here because there's always opportunities to go out on walks with dramatic, rugged landscapes. You know, even if it does mean comically overpacking our car. Sorry, Steph, about that. So I was really excited to bring these lenses along with me on this trip. You can see from the very first test footage I shot, as soon as I got them, I took them out of my camera, that some of the footage wasn't looking great. It was quite fuzzy, it was soft. They weren't really focusing very well to infinity. And I guess that's to be expected because with most cine lenses, especially anamorphic lenses, it is definitely worth checking back focus and infinity and calibrating them or shimming them to make sure that they're working properly with your camera and sensor and all that sort of stuff. The great thing about these lenses is that they have a beautifully simple back focus ring built into the lens body to quickly allow you to adjust this whilst the lens is mounted to the camera, allowing you to, quickly calibrate the lenses in seconds. You just focus the lens to infinity, move this dial a little bit. When it looks sharp, you're sort of at the right point and you lock it in. It's super quick, and as you can see here, I calibrated them on the first morning in Wales within about 15-20 minutes. They're not much larger than my DZOFilm Vespers, so this instantly opens up their usage to a much wider array of projects. Whether you're a solo operator or in a small crew, these are going to be much easier to transport and shoot with compared to much larger anamorphic lenses like the Orions, the Mercuries, or the Proteus. I shot on the Orions a few months back, and whilst I absolutely love those lenses, the image of them is cinema, feature film quality, they are prohibitively large to shoot on, and that does kind of lock them out for, solo shooters or small crew shooters where you're going to be moving around, traveling, and you need to be nimble. When you're shooting with the Orions, you definitely need additional support, so you're going to need much larger gimbals if you want to chuck a camera on a gimbal. You're definitely going to need to shoot on an easy rig if you're shooting handheld across the day. DZO supplied me with the 28, the 32, the 40, the 55 and 75mm, and they were all in the neutral flare option. I had them in PL mount, but they also come with EF mounts that are interchangeable. So the 28, the 32 and the 40 and occasionally the 55 were the lenses I bounced between the most. They all sort of occupy a sort of similar focal range that you're going to be wanting to shoot at. I think probably the 40mm is probably a general all-rounder, so if you were just going to pick up one lens, I'd probably look at that one. But I also found that the 28 and 55 or the 32 and 55 made a really nice pair, so if I was just going to get two lenses, I'd probably look at those two. But as they come as the A set, I think that comes as the 28, 40 and 75. I think that would be quite a nice set. Honestly, I went into testing these lenses with a pretty open mind, as I kind of heard mixed stuff about these online, and because I hadn't seen a huge amount of hype around them, I didn't really know what to expect when I started shooting on them. But I was quickly impressed by the images I was getting off these lenses. In fact, I absolutely loved them. We first took them out for a spin with the Komodo, just going for a walk. I brought the 40mm and the Komodo in a small backpack, and I was just using the MOFAGE POCO adapter with drop-in ND filters. I found this was a fantastic combination. The Pavos have this fantastic mix of character and sharpness that is just within that Goldilocks zone of anamorphics. So because they are 2x anamorphics, you obviously get some lovely separation between your subject and the background. Even though they are Super 35 and even when you are stopped down, that separation still exists. You get this wonderful swirly out of focus regions with sort of, the classic stretched oval bokeh. Everything just looks instantly very interesting. It looks very classy. It's very comparable to the Orions. I would say that the Orions have an edge over these lenses, but considering the price and considering the weight, the Pavos are lenses that I would far rather shoot on more often than these much larger and cumbersome Orions. Of course, if you're in larger productions with more budget, big crews and stuff, maybe that's not going to be such an issue for you, but if you're working with smaller crews or if you're doing doc and factual work and you want this sort of nice, classy, anamorphic look, I think the Pavos are a really solid choice to look at. So the majority of the lenses in the set are T2.1, and shooting wide open is possible, but just have quite a lot of fuzziness and chromatic aberration, lots of this sort of magenta and green fringing that can be a little bit distracting at times, especially when it's combined with a lack of sharpness, which will also make pulling focus particularly difficult. You're going to want to shoot at around a T2.8 T4 split to get the best balance of sort of, the characteristics of these lenses and sort of managing that fuzziness and chromatic aberration. And once you hit about T4, that's where you're going to get the best performance. They're really going to start to bite. You're going to get some nice sharp focus, eyes really going to pop. I tried not to go below T2.8 on most of the occasions I was shooting with them. Unlike some of their other cheaper counterparts, the Pavos also exhibit some really nice barrel distortion, which again works in harmony with the really swirly out of focus areas. And it really helps, again, to help draw focus to the center of the frame. Something I really like about these lenses and lenses like the Orions. Barrel distortion is something that tends to be missing on some of the cheaper anamorphics, especially the Sirui Saturns and the nanomorphs. It's only something you really begin to see at the more expensive level, with the exception of the Remus. In terms of flaring, these lenses are surprisingly controlled and well behaved, something that kind of sets them apart from both the more expensive Orions, but also the cheaper lenses, which tend to sort of have flares as a bit of a gimmick, where they tend to be a little bit aggressive, a little bit intrusive. But the Pavos don't really suffer from that. The lenses flare just at the point you'd want them to when shooting. So if you're shooting into very strong light sources, it creates this very subtle, cohesive flaring. It shows it where you want it to, but it doesn't sort of intrude when you don't want it to. So you do have to work to get it to flare, but not every single light source is gonna, bring it on. And when I was shooting with the Atlas Orions, the blue flare at time became quite intrusive, and it even caused a few issues when I was color grading. Because it's so dominant and present and saturated, it does sort of limit how you can treat the footage in post if you want to push saturation or color density. I found that the blue flare on the Orions often clipped, whereas you just don't have that issue with the Pavos. I would say the look of the Pavos is very classy and classic. None of the sort of anamorphic features, which can sometimes become distracting, were really present here. And it just generates this overall cohesive look that I really rate about these lenses. Another great feature of these lenses, and it's one of the things I noticed pretty quickly, is that they all have pretty decent close focus, especially the wider focal lengths. You know, with some of the cheaper anamorphics I've used over the years, especially the Sirui Saturns and the Nanomorphs, is that they didn't always have a sort of great close focus performance, and that sometimes acted as a bit of a barrier for moving around with the camera and shooting what you want to shoot. Often requiring the need for close-up diopters, which again slows you down, there's a massive faff, you've got to screw stuff onto your lens and so on and so on. I'll put the close focus up on screen now. It does tend to get worse as you go up on the focal lengths. I did notice it on the 75 when I was testing that out and wanted to get some nice close-ups. That didn't perform as well as I wanted it to. However, there is a 65mm macro lens in this set. Unfortunately, I didn't get to test it, but it does have macro capabilities. But generally, when I was bouncing between the 28, the 32, and the 40, it was just never a problem, and it allowed me to sort of get up close and personal with my subjects, allow me to move around with the camera, which is what I like to do. And I think if you're going to use these lenses on sort of dock shoots, where you are moving around a lot and you don't always have time for lens swaps, then that's going to be a really attractive thing because it'll allow you to get more coverage with a single focal length, you know, allowing you to get your tights and wides on a single lens just by moving your camera. One of my favourite beaches in North Wales is Hell's Mouth. It's very rugged and dramatic, it's not full of people. It never seems to have this sort of nice, welcoming vibe to it, which is why I guess it's called Hell's Mouth. So me and Steph took the 32 and 55 to test out on a walk with the LUMIX S5 2X. The LUMIX is obviously a full frame camera and these lenses are Super 35, but the S5 2X has some great anamorphic features. It has a great crop sensor mode feature, which allows you to shoot in 4:3 with a Super 35 crop. So these lenses instantly just work very well on this camera, and the camera can sort of handle the crop to get you the image that you need. And if you're not shooting with Super 35 lenses on your LUMIX, then what are you doing? You're really missing out. It doesn't degrade performance, you're not really like losing out on any image quality. As you can see from the footage I got back from this, the images look stunning. If you want to see the full edit, I'll link it somewhere here. You know, the LUMIX S5 2X is a hybrid mirrorless camera. It can look a bit digital and sharp at sometimes, but I found the combination of shooting in Super 35 mode with the Pavos just really helped to mitigate that. And everything just looked really classy and nice. And I would be perfectly happy shooting sort of high-end projects with this setup. This camera has anamorphic IBIS, means that I could get silky smooth footage even when shooting on quite a light handheld setup. It all just gelled very nicely, and I was just really impressed at how much I enjoyed shooting on the setup. I made a silly video a few months back about using the Atlas Orions on the LUMIX S9, which is their tiny mirrorless camera. It's generally a setup I'd never choose to shoot on again. The Pavos do pair really nicely with smaller setups, and it's something not to be overlooked. We tend to hone in on the image quality of lenses, but if they're no fun to use or they slow you down or you need a huge crew to use them, then that's like a really significant thing to consider when you're choosing lenses for your next project. You know, I shot with these two focal lengths in a backpack on the beach on a little mirrorless camera. The footage looks great. You're gonna have a much sort of simpler life on your shoots with these lenses than, you know, a set like the Orions. One of the best ways to test equipment, I think, is just to use it out on a project. So I managed to squeeze in a little dock shoot before I had to give the lenses back. Literally the day before I had to give the lenses back. So I hit up London-based photographer and filmmaker Juan Henriques. I wanted to make a little piece just about, you know, his story, a little portrait of him and his work and the sort of philosophy behind his work. If you want to watch the documentary, click somewhere here and it will be linked so you can watch it. This was shot entirely on my own, you know, trying to be nimble and quick. I think we had like a couple of hours to shoot it, so it involved shooting a little sit-down interview and then following around to get some B-roll out on the streets of London. And I chose to bring with me the 28, the 40, the 55 and the 75. I just left the 32 at home because it was too close to the 28. And my overall experience of shooting this as a solo operator, again, was absolutely fantastic. The lens was super easy to work with, super easy to pull focus by hand. Chucked all the lenses in my Peli case with my Komodo and all my accessories. And then when we walked around to shoot the B-roll, I just chucked through the focal lengths and a camera backpack. So it's a point that keeps coming up, and it's a point that I keep stressing. If you do shoot fashion or dock work, or you need to be nimble and you're moving around, these are the lenses that I would recommend over, you know, the Orions or even the Proteus lenses. I haven't shot on the Proteus, but I've seen them at various trade shows. I've picked them up and held them, and they're huge 2x anamorphics as well. So for this project, we're in London, so we all live in fairly small spaces. So the 28mm was fantastic for shooting the interview shots. I think I was sort of between T2.8 and T4. I was getting plenty of separation between the background. When we were walking around, the 40mm seemed to be a great all-rounder. But then I found the 55 was really great as sort of like a more isolated portrait shot, and sort of really getting in tight and isolating my subject from the surroundings and getting those kind of like slightly more dramatic close-ups. We were out shooting at golden hour on this, and you can see just how beautiful the bokeh looks through all the trees, as well as the subtle flaring behaviour. And I wish I could shoot all my work like this, and I didn't have to give these lenses back. I picked up a Focus Pro earlier in the year, and I must admit, I've not used it as much as I'd hoped. I've not really had time to really sort of demo it and test it before I was happy enough to bring it on professional shoots. So whilst I was in Wales, I decided to sort of, you know, really spend some time with it and get it set up and sort of test it out. And what's great is with a lot of these Chinese lenses, they come already preset in the DJI Focus Pro, so you don't have to go through the slightly more lengthy calibration process with the Focus Pro, and you can just use the app to sort of download the settings into the system. I guess even with the lenses being pre-calibrated and preset, there was still a bit of fine-tuning to get them sort of really on point and in focus. But once I got that all locked in, everything genuinely did work very flawlessly. Like, the DJI Focus Pro has the capability of being a very powerful system. It's not quite the set and forget sort of seamless experience that I think a lot of us wanted it to be. But once you've got it dialed in and you've got it up and working, it does have the potential to be very powerful and useful. And sort of getting anamorphic autofocus lenses really opened up what you can do creatively. It just opens up the opportunity to have more movement in your shots, so you can do push-ins and pull-outs and follow your subject without having to be so sort of like conscious of pulling focus on your own or having a focus puller. It does make the camera much heavier, which does introduce other issues. I've used the Focus Pro with the Orions as well, and that almost became prohibitively heavy. So you are probably going to need like an easy rig, I would say, if you're out shooting with the Focus Pro and the Pavos all day. But I can say and confirm that they do work really well together. They do play very nicely together. But because this combination did add so much weight, and because it does require a bit of sort of setup time at the beginning of the shoot, I didn't really feel confident using it and bringing it on my own on the dock shoot that I did, which is a bit of a shame. I just wanted to keep things simple because we didn't have a lot of time to shoot with it. When it works and it's calibrated, it does allow you to get some really powerful shots, and it can be a very powerful tool. And it's, you know, if you've got the time and the patience to set it up at the beginning of a shoot, it's definitely something you should consider bringing on set with you. At around £5,000 per lens, the Pavos do exist in this weird middle ground between, you know, the popular budget anamorphics, which go for about a grand a lens, you know, and the more top end so-called affordable anamorphic lenses like the Orions and Mercuries and the Proteus. So I think that's why these lenses have sort of flown under the radar, because when people have budget to rent anamorphics, they're going for the lenses at the top end, and when they have budget to purchase anamorphics, you know, they're picking up lenses at the cheap end. From what I've seen, I think I prefer the look of these lenses to the Proteus, but the Atlas lenses have a slightly more interesting look to me. But they come, you know, at a cost, not just in monetary terms, but also in size and ease of use. And as I've stressed throughout this, size is an important factor for me, and I assume a lot of other people too. And for those where size and image quality is important, then I'd really recommend the Pavos as the go-to set of anamorphic lenses, either as a rental or a purchase. You can pick these up either as a free lens set, they have an A set and a B set, or you can pick them up as an entire set. Personally, I'd be drawn to getting the A set, although, you know, I found I didn't use the 75mm that much. I think, you know, if you're doing 2cam interviews, it would get a lot of use for the tight shot on that. But obviously still to shoot on the Proteus and the RED, so just bear that in mind. But from what I've seen, I think these Pavos would be my pick for professional work. I'd love to know what you think of these lenses. What do you think of the projects I shot with them, the sample footage in this video? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think the pricing is justified? Are they too expensive for you? Would you pick them up if they're a little bit cheaper? I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this, so drop a comment down below. But that's it. Thanks to DZOFilm and CVP for loaning me these lenses. As always, please like this video if you enjoyed it. If you're not, subscribe to the channel. What are you doing if you're not subscribed to this channel? And also, if you don't already, please follow me on Instagram and Threads, as I'm always posting sneak peeks to these videos, behind the scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, see you later.